What was the scariest I need to leave now gut feeling you've ever experienced? Surfing a fairly secluded reef break, offshore across a channel. This place is in a very southern state of Australia. Overcast weather, but a still amazing day for the waves. I was surfing with only one other guy. We were trading waves and getting to know each other in between sets. I asked what he did for a living and he was a marine biologist. We'd both recently moved to the area and were new to surfing it as well. Despite it being extremely good surf, after 40 minutes he says, "I don't like this, something feels off. I feel like I'm being watched, like I'm bait." I didn't want to leave as it was excellent surf, but this guy was a marine biologist, so I took his instinct as a sign to play it safe. We paddled back across the deep channel together as quickly as we could without panicking and walked the 15 minutes trek back to the car park, talking shit the whole way. I got his mobile number for future surfs together given how small town it is here, and not knowing anyone. We noticed a 15 feet inflatable boat pull up near the reef and hang around for a bit without much thought. Later that night, while looking at my social media, I read about 3 fishermen at the same location we were at that morning, at the same time, in their boat. As they pulled up to check their crab pots on the beach side of the reef, they were circled twice by a great white shark that was as big as their boat. That guy most likely saved me from a horrible experience that day. I messaged him with the link to the Facebook page with the comments regarding their experience. Chills ran through my body for a good 20 minutes. He was adamant he felt the presence of something, and he was right. So back in her 20s, my mom was living in London and looking to move into a slightly bigger place. She'd found a really good price for a flat slightly out from the area she was hoping. She'd called the agent to book a viewing, and that's when things turned odd. So the guy booking the viewing started asking weird requests and questions, such as to bring her passport, her age, race, and physical appearance. Would she be coming on her own? Did she have a car? Or would she be getting the bus? He very persistent that she should arrive by bus as it would be easiest for her. Explains it was a straight road down from the bus stop to the apartment block. Obviously quite unnerved by this call, but still interested because the flat looked ideal. She and my dad, who were dating at the time, decided to check the exterior and surrounding area. The day before the viewing they drove there, first passing the bus stop he was indicating her to arrive via. From the bus stop there was about 150 to hundreds meters of derelict wasteland that she would have to walk past to get to the flat. And standing at the end of the street in the location this apartment block should have been was a huge abandoned building. Smashed broken windows, graffiti, no entry signs. The lot, definitely nothing inhabitable in sight. Still, when she tells this today, you can see how much it shook her. Of course she didn't go to her viewing. However, she informed the police advising them of the planned time and place. From what she saw from following up with them, they didn't appear to take this tip seriously and little was done. A couple years later though, while in a pub with some friends, she gets chatting to a guy she just met through mutual friends that night. He was in the police and through conversation her story came up. He said that area at the time of her viewing had a huge human trafficking problem. Still gives me chills. Years ago when I was still living at home with the parents, I drove home around 2 a.m. As I parked my car, I noticed a man walking down the street. I decided to wait until he passed my car and was far enough for me to get out. However, instead he passed my car and hid behind the van that was directly parked behind me. I guess he did not think I was paying attention to him. So I called my dad, who was asleep, to come down and get me. He did, and when the guy saw my dad, he immediately ran away. I was lucky. Me and my little sister went camping in the woods very close to our house when we were kids. We'd seen this bald guy with a blue shirt and a dog walking around, which isn't unusual for the area. You'll often see people walking and say hello. For some reason though, I just got this tight feeling in my chest, and my sister must have too, because we both just gave each other this look. I don't know what it was that made me do it. This is very out of character for me, but I took a photo of the back of him as he was walking away. A while later, we see the same guy again near the lake. He comes over and asks about the tent we're carrying, where we'll be setting up, and are we camping with our dad? We say yes, we're just going to see him now. We must have had the same moment of psychicness because we walked off up a fork in the path until we were out of view, then looked at each other and jumped down a path hidden by the bushes and waited behind them on the parallel trail for a bit. The guy watched us walk off, pretended to play with his dog until he couldn't see us, then turned around and ran up the path after us. Thankfully, he didn't see us hidden and carried on up straight where he thought we'd gone. We decided camping was a bad idea and went home. That evening, my mom shows us a post in the local residents group, which is a picture of the same bald guy trying to break into someone's house. Apparently, he'd just been walking around trying people's front doors and claimed to be a repair guy when he was stopped. I dread to fucking think what his intentions were, but it was very lucky me and my sister knew those woods so well, otherwise we wouldn't have thought to go down one of the hidden paths. Back in 2019, my husband and two girls aged 6 and 9 were on a road trip in the south. We had booked an apartment in Atlanta through Airbnb without knowing the neighborhood at all. It was bad, really sketchy, with a lot of creepy-looking people hanging around. We went into the apartment, and immediately my 6-year-old said, "I don't like it here." The door didn't lock properly. The beds were dirty, there was rotting food in the fridge, and the bathroom had not been cleaned in ages. My husband called the owner, who was furious and refused to give us a refund. To de-escalate the situation, my husband offered to not leave a negative review if we could just get our money back. The owner agreed, but asked us to wait for him so that they could talk about it in person. As soon as he hung up, I told my husband that we needed to leave, now. We hurried to the car, and as we pulled out of the parking garage, we saw the owner driving up with 4 friends. He didn't see us, and we bolted out of there. Ended up at a hotel on the 14th floor. Didn't even feel safe at street level. Sitting in my friend's backyard with their 2 kids, my husband, and another friend, enjoying pizza that my host made. It was a beautiful, clear day with no real wind. We're having a great time, just out of the pool and hungry for pizza, when I suddenly felt on edge. I looked straight at the kids about 8 and 10 or so years old and just said, "Get in the house." We all scrambled, and a second later we heard creaking, and maybe 5 seconds after it started, this big branch fell off of their pine tree onto the table where we were sitting. Thankfully, no one was hurt besides having to pick pine needles out of our pizza. I can only assume that I subconsciously heard the branch starting to give. When we were in our teens, my sister and I were walking our dog in our local forest area very close to our childhood home. We were about to leave and had just clipped our dog back up when a lady appeared out of nowhere and started chatting to us. She was odd. She told us her dog would love some socialization with our dog and could we go back with her for 5 minutes. What I hadn't clocked, but my sister had, was that her dog was nowhere to be seen. The lady was almost rounding us up to head back towards the forest when my sister had spotted a vein out of the corner of her eye. I was still oblivious at this point. Suddenly, my sister screams, "Dad!" And to our luck, my dad had finished work and was now out on a run. He starts raving and running towards us, and as we turn back around, the lady had vanished. My sister looks back over at the van and sees the lady closing the passenger door, and it's speeding off. Dog still nowhere to be seen. I believe we were minutes away from abduction. It was divine intervention that my dad happened to be at the right place at the right time. My brother and I were kids, playing hide and seek in the front yard of our house. My brother was 3, and I was 6. My brother was supposed to be counting and finding me, but he was taking forever, so I peeked around the side of the house to see what was taking so long. He had lost interest in the game and was standing near the front gate, which led to the street. As I'm looking, I see a brown car pull up with 2 men inside. The car wasn't familiar, and neither were the men. They both got out of the car and approached my brother. They started asking him questions and moving closer to him. I remember feeling panicked. I had learned about stranger danger in school and knew this wasn't right. I ran around the side of the house, flew through the back door, and screamed, "Someone is trying to kidnap Steve." My dad didn't hesitate. He got up and flew through the front door. When the men saw my dad coming through the door, they bolted and peeled out. From that day forward, we weren't allowed to play in the front yard anymore. It's a really scary memory for me. I was scuba diving in Asia. 3 of us went to a reef that hadn't been dived on before, which cottoned out at 50-70 m depth. 5 minutes into the dive, we all get a very bad feeling like we were being watched. Ignored it, but the feeling wouldn't go away. Further 10 min into the dive, we all watched the silhouette of a white shark glide slowly past, right on the periphery of where we could see. Then glide back in the other direction a minute later. The decompression stop to get out was the scariest 3 minutes of my life.